I've been given the humble assignment to share my conviction on the fourth word. Pull the mic closer, okay. Good evening once again. How was that? All right. I've been given the assignment to share my conviction on the fourth word that Jesus cried out from the cross, coming from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 46. And it reads, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? For the time that is mine, I want to communicate my thoughts through the title, God's Presence in His Absence. God's presence in His absence. In a world of toxic patriarchy and loathsome labels, here is an unashamed picture, the pixels of which frame God as Father, the one who does not fail His children. From every angle of testimony, there is reason for this son in this text to trust God, his Father, without reservation or disappointment. This is a clear representation of a father and a son. At his baptism in Matthew 3:17, the ubiquitous voice of all creation shouted from the heavens, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." Evidence suggests that hundreds of people simultaneously heard that singular defining voice of human history. The prophetic witness called in for testimony from the 8th century went on record saying that he was told to say, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders." This, ladies and gentlemen, is the language of fatherhood and sonship. To ensure my due diligence, I further searched through the archives of history and found a greater testimony in the witness of a man named Hosea. He recorded out of Egypt, "I have called my son." This sets the stage for the son himself to speak. And in John 17, he declares, and I quote, "I have given them the glory you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one." In his own words, Jesus testified to the oneness he enjoyed with his Father. At every angle, the case is clear. They enjoyed an unbreakable bond of oneness. And although we could dwell on the intimacy of their father-son relationship, tonight my focus is drawn to the profound disturbance that rips through this text. The father's actions against his son in this moment of apparent abandonment, a moment that carries immense emotional weight and demands our full consideration. You see, this is God talking to God about God's absence, about God's silence. It is the knowledge of the will of God that Jesus is after in Gethsemane, but when he's on the cross, he's not wondering about God's will, he's wondering about God himself. I mean, it's one thing for the world around you to go dark, but it is something altogether different for the light inside of you to be extinguished and for you to go dark. And in asking, "Why have you forsaken me?" Jesus is saying, I can understand why my family isn't here. After all, they're human. He's saying, I can understand why some of my disciples are not here. After all, they are human. But in asking, "Why have you forsaken me?" he's saying, I can't understand why you weren't here, because you're God, and you're never supposed to leave me. Yet here we are, the most difficult moment in the earthly life of Jesus. He's hurting, he's going through, and yet God is seemingly nowhere around. Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Consider the weight of this text. Our Lord Jesus Christ, the very embodiment of divine obedience, now standing at the precipice of unimaginable suffering. I hear in this moment a testimony from Isaiah proclaiming that suffering was always a part of the plan. In fact, that's why Jesus told his disciples that his suffering was certain. He said the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law. He must be killed and on the third day raised after death. That's why when you read Isaiah 53, that third verse says he was despised and rejected. We stand here today at a crossroads of understanding where the divine narrative intersects with the brutal reality of human action. We acknowledge the scriptural truth that suffering in its mysterious design held a place within the grand fabric of redemption. And it's within this very tension, this seeming contradiction that we stumble upon the staggering mystery held within the ancient words of Isaiah. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And so it was, here we are at the cross, the once newborn baby boy, born in a manger, now a full-grown man with a painful mission, crying out to his Father. He was wet, dripping with sweat and blood. He was hungry, having no food to eat. He was in pain with those nails wedged in his hands and in his feet, and some would argue he had a right to be just plain fussing, because that sentence, that crucifixion, was absolutely not justified. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus let out a cry on the cross that opened up Pandora's box. It was a cry of desperation. It was a cry of frustration. And I'm going to be a little crazy and argue it might have been a cry of negotiation. Yeah. Trying to negotiate the fact that he had done everything he was supposed to do. I mean, he was the model son. He had only been arrested one time his entire life. One time. He who multiplied loaves and fishes, demonstrating the boundless provision of God. He who healed the broken, restoring sight to the blind and strength to the lame, revealing the very power of the Creator. Think of the unfathomable paradox here. This King of Kings and Lord of Lords, willingly surrendering to the judgment of his own creation. The one who spoke worlds into being, now submitting to the nails of a Roman cross. The one who held the universe in his hands, allowing those same hands now to be pierced. Trying to negotiate the fact that he was a social justice advocate, the original civil rights icon, fighting for the least of these. Trying to negotiate the fact that he was the incomprehensible Jesus, who was sent willingly to walk in his deity and take on human flesh just to align himself with the very mortals that would vote unanimously to kill him. And initially it made sense to interpret the word that way because we've all felt forsaken. We've all felt alone to fend for ourselves, asking the question at least once or twice, hey God, where are you? I don't hear you. I don't feel you. I actually just feel all this pain, wondering why God was silent in the midst of my situation, in the midst of my trouble, in the midst of my sickness, in the midst of my difficulties. We've all borne our own crosses. The layoff, the loved one leaving the earth, the depression, the diagnosis. And when you're in the middle of all that kind of mess, you sometimes can't see any direction, sometimes can't see any movement on that thing, can't see any light at the end of the tunnel. My God. In the NEV, New Ebonics version, hey, why you leave me hanging? Why didn't you roll through and change this mess, man? But then I had to stop for a minute. Emmanuel, I took issue with that text, not Jesus, the text. The thought of Jesus being forsaken was way too much for me to take. I mean, I couldn't wrap my head around how God the Father could forsake God the Son. I mean, check this word. Why would God forsake him if God assigned him? Why would God leave him on that journey when he had already mapped out the full journey. And then I realized the context for the information was hidden in the biblical translation. The New Testament, it was written in Greek. And although written in Greek, Jesus cries in a Semitic language they call Aramaic. And when I researched the Aramaic terms for Jesus' cry on the cross, it absolutely blew my mind. You see scholarly translations of the text, watch. They speak to the very essence of the relationship between God the Father, who was in control, and God the Son, who relinquished his control. My God, why have you forsaken me? And in the translation of Aramaic, it can read this way, watch. My God, for this I was kept. And that right there should make you shout right out of your seat, because in the translation, Jesus gives us the blueprint on how to weather your storms, how to navigate your nightmares, how to hold on to heaven when you're living in the pit of your personal hell. You see, sometimes we get so caught up in our own situations, we forget that everything that we have gone through or go through has already gone through the Father. He already knew about the bad news. He already knew about the phone call, but you're still here because he kept you. Haters said you wouldn't amount to anything. Coveters wanted your glory because they didn't know your story, and all the while you kept thinking you were being crucified when you were actually being kept. I wasn't there that day that he died on the cross. I don't have all the scholarly answers to the Aramaic translation. I'm not Jewish, but what I am is a beneficiary of God's goodness. And I'm here to argue one principle tonight, the both and the and. You see, Jesus is both human and deity. He is both man and Messiah. He is both Son and Savior. But in this text, he is both victim and victor. He took all the hate he didn't deserve. People took their anger out on an innocent man and watched government leaders cater to their base and order the death of a brown-skinned dude. But in the end, the victor would win. And it's such a blessing to know that even though we think God doesn't hear me, he's continuing to work things out for me. I don't know who I'm preaching to in here tonight, but I need you to see God moving all in your thing. You see, if God didn't let Jesus finish the process, there would have been hell for you and me to pay. The process was painful. The cross was unbearable, but he finished it so we didn't have to feel it. I don't know about you, but I'm so glad that he was kept for this moment on the cross where even in his misery, he did that which was best for you and me. Sometimes God has to let you go through it to remind you that he's kept you through it. Through the hurt, through the pain, through the ups and the downs, through the hates, through the racism, through the classism, through the uncertainty of rifts. Be encouraged, Emmanuel. We gonna be all right. Because what I want to tell you tonight is, it's all right now. The crooked ways have been made straight. It's all right now. There's joy in times of sorrow. It's all right now. Tears will turn to laughter. It's all right now. The bitter has been made sweet. It's all right now. The gross places have been made plain, because when you get to the other side of this thing, the only thing that you're going to be able to say is, my God, for this I was kept.